Hello, everybody. Hi, Natalie, everybody. Welcome to the You Are Inevitable podcast, where we take a deep dive and tap into your inner resources. It's me, Kathleen Seeley, if you've never been here before. And beside me, I don't know, to my right or my left, I'm not sure how it shows up, is Natalie Alexia. We are two very, very seasoned coaches. And when we say seasoned, we mean we have lots of experiences up and down, but we bring some real life experiences, academic background, but we both share a passion for learning, love, laughter, and being a little disruptive. So we want to kind of shift your perspective, maybe, or disrupt your perspective, ideally. And remembering that you are the architect of your life, you design it. And these conversations are really here to just see where it goes. They are unscripted. We pick a topic, we invite you to join us, and then we see where it goes. So hopefully, and we've got lots of good feedback. And Natalie, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we've reached 600 followers of our podcast now. This is
Woo! We're so popular.
And because that's never enough. If you know anyone, feel free to share this with people who might benefit from this content as well. Those of you watching the recording later on, make sure you like and subscribe. That helps us out. And we want to continue to bring these live, unscripted, who knows where we're going to go conversations. Today, Natalie, we are talking about getting out of your comfort zone. And what that has brought us, and sometimes why we do not. But first, let's look. We've got Jocelyn here from California, Noreen. Hey, Bob, KDB. I think I saw John on there. Of course, Veronica and Carson. Anyway, great. Good to see you all. So let's start it off a little bit with a little definition. And this is compliments of probably most likely a Google search in university that oftentimes does not count as research. However, that seems to serve us. So I'm just going to read a definition just for kicks, and then we're going to riff on what we think about it. So comfort zone is a psychological state or situation where a person feels at ease, familiar, and in control, which typically reduces the level of perceived risk or threat. The zone can refer to various areas of life, such as daily routines, work practices, relationships, behaviors, and activities that an individual engages on a regular basis. So comfort zone is really staying safe, essentially. I've often heard people, speakers, I even have been caught saying this, and all of our emails inviting you to this podcast say this, talking about a comfort zone. But anyone who's been around me long enough knows I don't really think it's a comfort zone. I call it a familiar zone, a zone of familiarity, because it's not necessarily comfortable. It's just more predictable. What do you think of that, Natalie?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, and since we came up with this topic, I've been considering what are the areas in my life where I am currently operating in a zone of familiarity, because I think it's a little stretch at a time, I guess, is how it would be my approach to comfort zone. You know, not everything all at once. That would probably feel quite overwhelming, but it certainly had me reflecting. And yeah, I would definitely call it a zone of familiarity, because it can be, you can keep doing something that feels familiar, which actually feels terribly uncomfortable. Yeah. I mean, think of the end of my marriage, for example.
Mine too. There is another thing that we have in common. But yeah, it's familiar, not necessarily comfortable. And also it can be comfortable. So it's a both and. But we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And, you're sort of not getting out of your comfort zone if you're feeling sort of stagnated. Stagnated, is that a word? It's a verb. In your personal professional life. And I know I have felt that. I felt stagnant lately, actually, not professionally, but personally. Probably talk about that a little bit later. Feel restless or bored, or unsatisfied with current routines. I've been noticing myself doing so many things habitually just because that's what I do, and asking myself, why are you doing this? It's like I'm in this whole shift or change in life right now, maybe because I just turned 59, but it's kind of been coming on for about the past 6 or 8 months or so. If you feel like you're not reaching your potential or achieving your goals, I don't know about that. Like, yeah, if you're not achieving your goals, if you're achieving all of your goals that you set, you're probably sitting in that comfort zone a little too long. What you say, Natalie? If you're like, yeah, marked it all off my list, then maybe you're giving yourself a little too easy of a goal. What do you think of that?
Yes, I think at the gym when I used to go to when I at some other period of my life I used to go and do CrossFit, they would call it sandbagging.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like if you picked the smaller box to jump on instead of the box that you actually could jump on, they'd be like, you're sandbagging. So that's what came to mind when you
Yeah.
said that. Yes. I think I think if you're ticking all your goals off your list on a daily basis, potentially it's an opportunity to consider a bigger vision.
Yes, or like when you're in spin class. I don't know if you go to spin class. It's my favorite. Is I love my bike, as you know, it's my true passion and love. Is that you can like take off the pressure and you could spin really fast and look like you're working really hard. But here's the thing: when I do that, when I notice I'm doing that, I just kind of I out myself on that because I want to be challenged. And another thing that keeps us sort of in this comfort zone place is really um, a lack of confidence because we're afraid to fail. Failures. If you haven't had a good failure lately, then you're really not taking any risks. I can tell you, I've actually we've had a number. We fail often and fail forward in our company. That's how we learn and stay really, really great and provide really, really great products and services because we try new things. That doesn't work, we adjust. We try new things. That doesn't work, we adjust. So the other thing, you're staying in your comfort zone when you haven't learned in a while. I am never guilty of this because I love reading. I love learning. I just finished a coaching program. I'm in another one. How about you, Natalie? How about you with the learning or a new hobby?
Oh yeah, my new hobby.
Well, remember you talked about something you were doing out that caused you to perspire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have my
Yeah,
Zumba. Is that
yeah.
what we're talking about? Yeah. Yeah, no, I would consider myself a lifelong learner. I absolutely love learning new things. And I can resonate with that feeling when I haven't learned something new in a while. It is what you were talking about before, that lack of being challenged. And it makes me feel, I don't know, like learning for me is something that I find really, really invigorating. So I have been learning Zumba and I do have this very long-term goal of being able to teach a Zumba class. But we'll first learn how to do Zumba is step one in that plan. But I also am always reading and excited to develop and grow my skills in the professional sense too.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about today. I love it, Kathy. I never fail. I either win or learn. Good to see Sunset Beach here today, Sylvan Lake, Alberta. Oh my gosh. And I see Katie B, you made it. I'm so excited that you're here. All right. So let's get into it. Anyone out there in Chatland feeling like you're just kind of sitting in that comfort zone? And it is like we as humans, we need to keep pushing it, right? We need to keep trying new things. If there's nothing new coming in or coming out or no tension, then we're what's called dead.
Yeah, I was thinking of one because I know one of the things that we were going to kind of talk about here to get the ball rolling was like the last time that we were outside of our comfort zones. And like I said, I have been reflecting about when was the last time and also where would I like to push the edges or expand next. But I was thinking when I first started working with you, actually, it was because you have been a mentor of mine and someone that I looked up to for such a long time as a trainer and in the business that you ran. When we first started working together, I really noticed that for myself, it often felt hard to contradict an opinion that you might have about something, and or share an idea that might be different to the idea that you were having, because there was some discomfort in occupying this new role as collaborator in business with you. And so I had to really, and I've been through this kind of experience before. I remember there was a point in my marriage where I wanted to be willing to express what I wanted and needed more. And I'd spent so much time not doing that. And so I always try to allow myself grace when stepping outside of my comfort zone, particularly with regard to communication. In my head, I have some kind of internal script running, which is like, okay, it might be a bit clumsy at first, because I noticed, like in the beginning, if we're having a conversation, my initial desire was to agree with you, as opposed to, I think sometimes, if we're looking for that, it's not even, I don't even want to describe it as healthy conflict, but more like ideation and brainstorming and evolving of ideas. And so just being gentle with myself that it might not be completely elegant and seamless when I first start to contribute, but I'm here to contribute. So I have to just start opening my mouth and saying the ideas from the place of, we're not attached to them. These could be good ideas, they could be bad ideas, but that's why I'm here. So that was, I think, a evolution of me stepping outside of my comfort zone in terms of contributing in the work environment that feels quite recent to me.
I like that you brought that up, because it makes me think about the other side of that, and sort of for my comfort and getting out of my comfort zone. First of all, you are not the only one afraid to contradict me. And just to unwind that a little bit, it's interesting because I really want to learn. I really want to grow. I do love, love, love feedback. And then I have such a hard exterior. And I can be so clear and so seem so sure that I make it so people don't contradict me. And that is also a learning for me with getting out of my comfort zone of actually learning that I don't need to know it all or have it all. And that was a lifelong journey. And I still am learning that, but I find it interesting that that's what you brought up today, because as time has passed with our working so intensely together, I've noticed more and more the sort of the back and forth, the exchange of ideas, where we've created way better work than I could ever do alone. And it's me letting that go. And the comfort zone that I was in prior to bringing you and Veronica and we have other consultants on board, but bringing on board to the team was just this sort of, it's uncomfortable letting other people play. It's uncomfortable taking on other opinions. What if what I had been saying up until now is bullshit? And maybe, and so that is a big stepping out of my comfort zone, is letting go and letting go of control, and being really, really open to feedback and new ideas, and not going my way. And then there's times when, because I want to kind of dovetail this into a conversation a little bit about trust. There's times when I just know and I feel and I sense that I'm right on something. I just have this I can't figure out why. I don't know where it's coming from. But there are times when I kind of, you've been there, held my ground on certain things. Whether at the end of the day I'm right or not, that remains to be seen. But it's also this sort of trusting yourself when to let go and when to be uncomfortable. And for me, it's like, what am I afraid of? And what is getting in the way of me opening up to alternative points of view, alternative, just essentially feedback. And I like, David, I like the word, how about substituting the word receiving for the word feedback? Dang, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. I gotta work on that, because I have a habit of calling it feedback. But when we trust ourselves, we're more willing to take risks. And how we build trust in ourselves is by taking risk. It's like, it feels like a pyramid scheme. It's like, wait a minute, each feeds the other, but it is that taking a little bit of risks and trusting intuition. Yeah. Trusting into, I work on it, but sometimes Kathy, I have to really pay attention to, is it my control that is pushing resistance, or is it really this intuitive feeling? And I do work on really getting quiet and saying what's happening right now. So that would be well, we danced outside of our comfort zones for the last nearly 2 years now. It has proven to be one of the greatest stepping into my ease with uncertainty moments of my life, actually. You and Veronica have just changed our lives completely. Calculator is sometimes when I think about it, I'm not risking as much as I think. Yeah, person. So that's where my thoughts are right now. What do you think?
I think that piece about intuition and trusting yourself is because it comes up, this piece, self-confidence. In order to move outside of our comfort zones, we need self-confidence. Well, what is a step in the direction of self-confidence? As you said, it's trusting yourself. And I do notice that you said control and intuition, and I would describe it as, it's probably the same thing, fear and intuition, and feel very similar. And checking in, finding a way to check in around, is this really intuitive? Is this really an opportunity for me to trust myself, or am I being guided by fear in this moment? That was just what was coming up when you were talking about that. And I think it's interesting that, well, of course, it makes perfect sense. Anytime we do something new, we're stepping outside of our comfort zone. So it makes perfect sense that for both of us, as we stepped into this experience of working together, that's what was happening. But go us.
Yeah. And, just having had, actually, I have to say, those of you watching later and here now, that was an insight for me just now when you shared, Natalie. It for me, into my own comfort zone, balancing control, intuition, fear of not looking good, all those things. And just working it through, because I know 100% of the time when I let go, better things come. And trusting in sort of, I just trust in the universe. I've learned that things really work out. And this is kind of a tangent, which I'm known to do. But I was thinking about, when I lose something, I think I've talked about losing something, a thing, I just stopped looking for it. It's like, it isn't like it didn't disintegrate, right? It's somewhere on the planet. And if I'm supposed to run into this thing again, I will. And that can kind of be the same for work and letting certain things go and leading into new things. Nothing ever really goes away. It just sort of evolves, and we can capture it again if we needed to. I think, to go back to that comfortable place. I don't know where that thought's going, but it'll probably spin wildly.
KDB did put a question in the chat. She said, what if you are uncomfortable not appearing to move forward on a current path, and or the path just feels like it keeps getting detoured? And I don't know if you want to put a bit more context about that in the chat, KDB. I think you always come up with the best questions, and we love answering them. For me, if a path keeps getting detoured, I feel like I tend to pay attention to, I don't know, like a direction, but without attachment to specific things happening as I move in the direction, to enable me to flow with life as it shows up. So if I keep getting detoured off a path, which has happened at different points in my life, although it can be annoying because I think I know best.
Yes.
I tend to pay attention to the fact that I keep getting detoured and asking myself questions like, what is this trying to tell me? Or what is it that I'm not seeing here? Or how could I see this differently? Or how could I move towards something how could I get where I'm going in a different way? Those types of questions, unless you want to put any more context for us in the chat.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh,
No,
I really, I go back to, predictably back to values and that conversation we've had before about form and function. It's like you can get so, I know I've gotten so stuck on things that it has to look like this, it has to be this. And my life has not turned out at all like I thought it might. Not, but then I think, okay, what parts would I change? If I change that, then it would move this. So more just really understanding sort of what is the what are you seeking with the thing that you're working on, what you're working towards, the current path. And if things keep popping up, what, as Natalie said, like, what is that telling you? And are you overly focused on it being that way, which I call form, or function? What is the bigger service of that thing that you're looking for? And is there other opportunities? I so many things have happened in my life that I never planned for that are incredible. Just so many things. So I would pay attention, KDB, to what is this showing you, and are you too attached to a certain way for something to look, and revisit your values again, and then looking at the values. It's almost like a values class, sorry, but looking at the belief around it, because the only way we grow and become comfortable being uncomfortable is to question our beliefs. What is the story I'm telling myself about my life, about our work relationship, about X, about this? What story am I telling myself? And is there a new story? And we should just focus one podcast just on identity. God, I'm going all over the place today because this topic is really
great. We love it. KDB saying, can you speak more to function? So I was thinking that actually when you put that, the earlier question in KDB, and I'm sure Kathleen will add to it, but what was coming to my mind is that exercise of what is it that I'm trying to achieve here, and going back to that, and what will that bring me? The example is your guy who wanted to double his revenue. And what will that bring me? Oh, it will enable me to buy a house. I think it was in Calgary. And what will that bring me? Oh, it will be a place for me to spend more time with my family. And what will that bring me? Oh, it will bring me more connection with my family. So that was Kathleen's story that was going through my head when she was just sharing what she was sharing, which is the form is double my revenue, but the function is feel more connected with my family. So can you look underneath what it is that you're trying to work on? And it doesn't mean don't have goals, and it doesn't mean don't reach for these big things. They still matter and they're important. But sometimes if we can find the why that's driving our behavior, and then with these detours that you keep mentioning, KDB, maybe there's a way that you can pull the thread from what it is you're really wanting to create and what it is that you're experiencing.
And to talk about it in relation to comfort zone, actually, what is the function of the comfort zone? It's really to keep us safe. And it's kind of a lie we tell ourselves, because like our whole entire life, we've evidence that we can survive. We have evidence we can survive anything that comes our way because we're here, right? So, I mean, that seems rather, I can't think of the word, but yes, that's a good word. That wasn't the word I was thinking of, but even better. But what is it? The function, and the function is because we have a fear, and Holly says, speaking right to my question, comment, Kathleen, digging into where our beliefs are coming from. Our beliefs are coming from stories we've told ourselves over and over again about how the world works. And if we don't test those stories, we hold ourselves back from growing. And our fear is what holds us back. Like, I've talked many times, we're born with two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Anything else is a story that we've created about how the world works. And one of my early mentors, Will Schutz, taught me that we really only have one fear. And our one fear is our fear of our inability to cope. Just let that land. If Veronica, if you could type that in the chat. We have one fear, our fear of our inability to cope. So people can maybe take that with them. And I'm going to go a little bit further on that. We're not necessarily afraid to tell someone the truth or to give someone feedback, or what did you call it? I have to look back at what David called it. We don't have a fear of sending. But our fear isn't so much the giving the feedback, the telling the truth, the sharing, the whatever. Our fear is our inability to cope with the reaction. Our fear of our inability to cope with what happens as a result of us saying something or doing something. Like if we take a risk in our business, and we're taking lots right now, we're doing some really cool, exciting things that are like, scary and awesome. It's like we take a risk. Our fear isn't, will it be good? Our fear is, can we cope if it doesn't work? Or if it's not what we expected? Can we cope with that as a business? Or can I cope with that? And here's the best analogy. Imagine you're swimming in the ocean and enjoying the dive, and then you come into contact, you see a great white shark. Theoretically, for those mere mortals, we would feel fear. That's, oh my gosh, I'm swimming, I see a shark, I feel fear. But imagine going into that very same ocean in a shark cage. And theoretically, people, just go with the metaphor, you would feel less fear. And here's the thing, the shark didn't change. Your ability to cope with the shark changed. And that's the ability to cope with something that comes our way. Our one fear is our fear that we can't cope. So we find ways to cope. And how do we find ways to cope? We have to examine our beliefs and our stories that we're telling ourselves how the world works. Sometimes they're like stories that no longer work. I remember there's this, I don't know if it came from my family or someone else's family. It's some tale from time gone by, but the mom is getting ready to cook the Easter ham and cuts the ends off the ham. And so then the grandma did it, the mom did it, then the daughter did it, and finally says, why do we cut the ends off the ham? I don't know. My mother did it. Well, grandma, why do we cut the ends off the ham? Well, the ham was too big for the pot. Right? And how many of us are cutting off the ends of the ham in a context that doesn't serve us anymore? And that's that belief system that doesn't serve us. It's like, what am I believing about myself, about people, about how the world works, how the world should work? KDB, embrace those detours as opportunities. What is this teaching me right now in this moment? And the other thing is, you can also just rest and say, God dang, I'm tired. I feel defeated. I'm just going to sit in that for 5 minutes and be in it for a moment. That's okay. We all get triggered. We all have setbacks, but the key isn't that you get a setback or a failure or it didn't turn out how I thought it would. It's how long do you stay there, and what do you tell yourself, and how do you move forward?
Well, I think it's that piece too about, for me, there's some combination between 100% examining the stories that we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we have about the world, and how that holds us back. And the other piece for me is being willing to get into action, even if it's a tiny action, because I think there's something about when we think about it in the context of our inability to cope, resilience is, in my opinion, often born through experience. And it's like, for example, going back to the beginning of this conversation, I shared an idea that was potentially contradictory to yours in a meeting, and I didn't die, and you didn't fire me. And, every time and it's a small example, I'm sure the first time I did it, I don't happen to have a catalogue of the events in my brain, but I'm pretty confident the first time I did it, I would have shared something quite small and measured. And every time I shared an idea or a contradictory thought or, a contribution, and I didn't die and you didn't fire me, I gained the confidence and the resilience to continue taking the action. So I think it can often look as something really small. And that's also going back to that piece of like trust in ourselves too, right? We do something that feels uncomfortable, and as we do something and this imagined fear dissipates, we grow that muscle of trusting ourselves. Oh, it's okay, it's all right. Okay, I've put one foot forward, I can put the other foot forward, and let's just keep seeing what happens.
Yeah. The word resilience triggered another thought in me, thinking about taking risks builds our resilience. It gives us more evidence that, nothing bad's going to happen. Like my expression, I wore a 2-piece bathing suit, nothing bad happened. You challenged me, nothing bad happened. And what happened on my end was we got better. And so here's the thing, it's, this quote success, or whatever that is for you out there, it's really a collective experience. I can't do things on my own. I'm limited. And so I have to have the courage to let go. And every single time you've brought something to the table, every single time, it's made us better. And that's the same as like Veronica. Well, she's like the leader from behind, right? She watches and says, hey, I have this idea. It's like, oh, boom. Carson has always been able to see the big picture. And I sort of like know my zone, but I had to let go of sort of holding it all in and controlling it all just to keep me comfortable and feeling safe. But thinking to resilience and our own resilience. And I'm going back to Katie B's question, because I think it's probably not unique to her. People feeling like, oh, I keep hitting a wall. So think about the systems, go bigger, higher level. Like what systems in your life are there that are causing you to keep hitting these roadblocks? Like you have to look at what is around us. And are you creating a system, or do you have systems in your life that are causing you to continue to have needing to build your resilience? Because it's not like this endless pot. Yay, we are survivors. Humans are survivors. But think about, okay, I keep hitting this wall. Things keep on coming up. I'm going to step back and say, what if this is this path? What if I need to like take a whole right turn instead of going straight? Do you remember that, I don't know if it's a poem or whatever, Portia Nelson? Have you ever heard of that? Okay, let me see if I can remember it. Portia gets up in the morning, walks out her door, falls in a big hole. It's not my fault, I can't get out. Day 2, falls in a hole. It's not my fault, but asks for help to get out. Day 3, falls in the hole, walks down the same road, falls in the hole, says, oh, it is my fault. Day 4, takes a different road. And sometimes we need to keep doing that, but we sometimes have systems around us that we take for granted, that we assume are the way they're supposed to be. Again, all the way back to, I think it's Holly asking about beliefs, but it's examining those beliefs. Well, what makes me think that the world works this way? And could there be another angle to this? We bring a frame, and our growth, I think, is all about questioning the frame. And you might return to it and say, yeah, that actually is how my world is going to work. Okay. But if we don't have the courage to question or to challenge ourselves, there's no growth.
So, and I'm wondering if that's what you just said is the answer to this next question, but I'm curious to know if you recognize that you're operating in your comfort zone in some area of your life and you want to make a choice to push your edges or move outside of your comfort zone, what's your kind of go-to? What's your strategy?
Well, first I open a bottle of Cabernet. What is my strategy? I do think of what is the worst thing that could happen? What is the best thing that could happen? And then I feel like I'm prepared for either. And it's usually something in the middle. And I remind myself of how many things I've actually come through. And I also just, I really have got this today. I mean, it could change tomorrow, but I really feel like this deep trust in myself that what is happening and where we're going is the right direction. And I'm really in this. You've been the subject of it many times, but the contemplative place personally, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? And what feels right? And just saying, well, I'm going to take some risks. And what's the worst thing that could happen if I go to Bali for 4 months? I mean, seriously, like what bad thing could happen? Probably nothing. I might kind of come back with new insight. So professionally, I rely on the team and just tell myself, I don't know better. What the heck? Let's try something new. And we have we have a real killer track record, so that helps. But personally, it's that longing or that wondering or that curiosity. And I've taken tons of risks personally. I remember I decided one thing out of my comfort zone is traveling. People find this shocking. I'm very nervous to travel, very nervous. And I went, I remember a couple of year before COVID, I drove down the West Coast for a month, me and my Beetle. And it was after I met up with you, your daughter, and Alice for lunch. And your daughter turned me onto the podcast, My Favorite Murder. And I'm driving home listening to My Favorite Murder, and I get lost, and I end up at the top of this mountain. It's like a logging road, no service, nothing. And I was just like, I'm listening to murder podcasts. I am completely lost. And so what do? I get out and I take a selfie because I'm like, if this is the last place where they it'll be a marker, but also, they'll know I had a sense of humor. But just kind of knowing that, I got up to this top of this mountain. If I just keep driving down, something's going to happen. I'm going to find my way. So kind of like just finding my way. David, this thought keeps popping to my mind, perhaps because of my involvement with A Course in Miracles. Oh, I love A Course in Miracles. I truly believe that the essence of all fear is a fear of not being connected to our source, whatever one wants to call it. I am learning that, David. I love everyone read David's comment. It's so true.
I would say my biggest first step when I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone is just to notice what I'm doing and the stories I'm telling myself. And so anyone who listens to Kathleen and I on a regular basis, I think I've mentioned a few times that I'm on a journey of wanting to work on my health. And it definitely feels like a journey. And I created a vision board about 3 years ago, and pretty much everything on my vision board has happened except for this one section around health. So I'm like, it must be time for the health section. And this week, actually, I've been noticing how I talk to myself about my body. So it's been quite interesting. That was like always my go-to start, because I feel like you can't fix a problem if you don't know what the problem really is kind of my thinking around it. So before I start moving into, how do I push my edges? How do I expand outside of what I'm currently experiencing to create something new? I feel like I first need to have this sense of where I'm at. And so on the weekend, I did a list of all the things I have recently said to my body. Oh. And it was 2.5 pages long. I'm going to say that I'm quite unkind. Yep. And then I created another list, which was all of the negative things that I have experienced or other people have said about my body. And it was about 1/2 page long. And many of the events could have been interpreted as neutral, right, which was interesting. And so this week I actually have, because I'm very busy, so I don't remember things. So I wrote this on my hand. It's been on my hand for 4 days now. And it's a heart. It says, heart MB, love my body and bless my food. And it's been on my hand
Oh,
for
I was
3
wondering what
days
that was. I thought you got a new
every
tattoo.
time I see it, it's just kind of a constant reminder to pay attention, like as I'm passing a mirror or as I look down at myself or as I'm in the gym or whatever I'm doing. And so it's like, I almost feel like it's a gathering of evidence of where I am. And it's often where I start when I want to make a change in something, before I decide what beliefs need to be shifted in order for me to create sustainable change.
It's funny because when I got divorced, when it was sort of kind of final-ish, I got a tattoo, and it says, life is good. Yeah, and same. I had to remind myself, life is good. It's scary, but it's good. Like, it was one of the scariest things I ever did because everything changes in your life when you leave. From the outside, looked like perfect life. From the inside, for neither of us was it even close to perfect. So it's like, if you have sort of, essentially, I'm taking away from that, is like, have reminders around you of why you're doing something, and that it's like probably not terminal. Loving your body. I don't know of anyone who has perished as a result of just loving themselves. I don't know. Maybe there is.
Yes, and I like to catch myself in the act. That's how I think of it when I'm trying to shift a belief, which ultimately is like my story about how I see the world, so I can move outside of my comfort zone, which is what we're here today to talk about. It's like I kind of liked it there. And I always feel that it's like if you can catch yourself in the act enough, then at some point you can make a decision either to choose a different thought. But if you have this constant unconscious programming that's running, like until I wrote that list, honestly, if someone had asked me before the weekend, on a scale of 1 to 10, on a daily basis, how unkind are you towards your own body? I might have said 3. And then I wrote the list and I was like, oh no, it's about an 8.
Yeah.
And it's not even, the thoughts are happening on a level where until I bring my focused attention to them, I'm not even realizing what the story is that's driving the behavior.
Yeah, that's interesting that I like that you did that list, because I was hearing myself over these past months. Like, I went to Dallas for 3 months because I wanted to change my systems. I'm really looking at feeling where I live. I feel very confined, and my kids are gone. It's a small town, beautiful town. I live in the best place in the world. If you want to come on vacation, just doesn't serve me anymore. So I'm trying new places. Like, I'm going to Palm Desert for a month in July, just checking it out. Have a feeling I'll end up in Arizona, but we'll see. Anyway, I was saying, the narrative I was sharing with people is, gosh, business is really, really tough. COVID is, really, we've really are working hard. And my life, I'm really, I even use the words dying on the vine. And I was listening to myself saying, what the F actually are you talking about? Business has never been better. We're producing the best work we've ever done. We've moved into our own space, which was a huge friggin' risk. And we're doing our, really landing some new work, new programs, new opportunities. We're really, as a team, just jiving together and connecting and really doing some incredible things. I am like not dying on the vine. I'm just finding a new way to be. And where do I want to go? It's an opportunity that I have, the abundance that I can try new things. I mean, what am I saying to myself? So almost like your body audit, I sort of did a self-talk audit and changed things. I went to see my sister this weekend, who's had some real health challenges, and she's like the most positive person in the world. And she's like, how are things going? Oh, I'm so excited about these new things that we're doing. I'm feeling really excited about going to Palm Desert because Carson and Natalie and her kids are coming, and Kennedy and her boyfriend are coming down. We're just going to have such a great time. Caleb, someone I worked with at the Canfield group, is coming to visit for a weekend. I mean, everything is so friggin' good. So it's changing the narrative. Same scene, right? Same production, but just changing the narrative ever so slightly. And sometimes we're encouraged to, I think, encouraged to stay in misery, and encouraged to don't get too uppity. Who do you think you are? Those are the messages that come to me anyway. But it's like, there's lots of things that can happen as a result of sort of disrupting your comfort zone, your familiar zone, and saying, okay, I know you're there, but sometimes things can happen. And Natalie, what are your thoughts on this? I've noticed that when I move into something new, try something new, some people react in a very negative way, and other people are like, yeah, come on over to this side. It's really exciting. Like, you can get very different reactions. So that's why it's so important to know who we are in our path forward and what it is we're trying to, what is the function of this action. So what are your thoughts on that? I kind of talked for a long time there.
Yeah, I feel, I guess, how does moving outside of our comfort zones impact our relationships professionally and personally, right? Is what I feel that we're talking to. And I think I have an interesting relationship with comfort in general. When I first started looking at my values through Kathleen's work, a value that I would always choose from the very beginning was ease with uncertainty. And to me, ease with uncertainty as a value is sort of the most representative of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. But I had quite an unusual upbringing, which was that I've lived in 6 countries on 3 continents. I went to 11 different schools. And so I feel like my affinity for ease with uncertainty was almost, it wasn't intentional. It was kind of woven into the fabric of who I was just by the experiences that I didn't actually choose, the experiences that I had when I was younger. And so I think I have always, I've been so used to change. And I can remember a period in my life where I can almost feel weirdly less comfortable when things are not changing than when things are changing. And I have had to work on that over time, because not right now, but at certain points in my life that manifested as like the unconscious creation of chaos, which is not a very enjoyable way to live. But I think I do want to answer your question. But I think because of my life having been so full of change, it has been easier for me to sink into this feeling that people and places and things aren't forever. I don't know how else to say it. So it's like, yes, as I have shifted and changed over time, then certain relationships have dropped away from my life and other relationships have emerged. But that was always the way of my life, just because of the nature of how much change I experienced. But I think it's absolutely true. I mean, I think, when you were saying, sometimes I think in society, what misery loves company is what comes up for me. And I can always remember when I was a young mum, I would get invited to coffee mornings with other mums, and I would go, and my experience was that people like to complain about their partners and their children. And so I stopped going, because I didn't want at that time to complain about my partner or my children. And it was there's almost like the group thing of like, well, this is what we're all doing, what's wrong with your life kind of environment. So I think it's important for us all to pay attention to what we're surrounded with and what we want to be surrounded with as we continue to learn and grow and evolve as people. And I don't know where this thought's going, but that
I just have to say something. I joined a parenting group too when Carson was a baby. And I have the exact opposite experience. I sat with these women and they're talking about how wonderful their lives are with these new babies, and everything is rainbows and butterflies. And I just said, actually, it's horrible. My nipples are torn. I can't breastfeed him. I'm not enjoying this experience at all. I just expressed what was going on for me, and they asked me to leave the group because I was too negative. So somewhere in the middle of your group and my group, like using the parenting sort of those examples, we have to find our people who can move us forward, and always knowing we have these anchors. I have friends who I have like 4 or 5 friends I've had since like 5th grade, just like rocks in my life, and who have sort of navigated all this path. And then I've left hundreds behind, and others have left me behind, because sometimes it is a lonely journey and path into finding who we are, and sort of just leaning into uncertainty. And that's where all the good stuff, isn't this a Canfield quote, lies just outside our comfort zone, something like that. But it's really true, and that the sense of, wow, we tried that, and what worked, what didn't work, what's next is I like that feeling, and I like having it in the professional realm, having a team of people who are, like, we are the bomb together. And it's so joyful. And I have a few friends who I feel like we are the bomb together, and it's so joyful. And those are the stories I'm telling myself as I move into new things. And hey, just sidebar, not so much a sidebar. How many of you, or any of you, watch here now or later, came to our Your Inevitable challenge? We are doing another challenge. This challenge is really specifically, though, for coaches, trainers, consultants, people building a business that you need to attract people to. And it's 3 days. And you'll probably get an email about it. But I invite you to join us in our challenge. They're always good. They're always very rich. You have lots of takeaways. We have some really cool partners in the challenge as well. Anyway, you'll get an email about that. But anything else you want to say about it?
Business Breakthrough Bootcamp is what it's called. So watch out for that. Oh, and Carson has put the link in the chat there for anyone who's interested. But yeah, we're really excited about offering this new exciting opportunity to help people accelerate and move their business forward in what we feel is like an authentic, sustainable, profitable way, kind of moving away from the quick fix mentality, which we feel has dominated the online space for a long time. Make 6 figures in 5 minutes whilst doing no work and sitting on a beach. Right. Through some magical system, but more like, how do I really create a business that I love, that's a great representation of who I am, that sustains over time, which we've all done. So really excited to play in that space with whoever comes.
Yeah, we have some cool guests in that, doing some helping with some really integral parts to business that are actually secret members of our team. But anyway, that said, I encourage all of you to notice. My takeaway from today was really about noticing the language we use to ourselves about what's happening around us. And KDB, I'd be interested in hearing, if you shift the language or sort of look more deeper into function, what changes for you? And all of you out there, just questioning the beliefs, the stories you're telling about yourself, and turn it around a little bit. Like, it's an opportunity. And sometimes shit happens, right? And it's a crappy day. Like, you got to have that too. Everything is not rainbows and butterflies. But it's feeling all the feelings, be they up or down, but not getting swept away in either, and just knowing you're on a path forward in your own evolution. That was my sort of top shelf takeaway.
Yeah. And I think I've always loved, Kathleen, your advice about what's the worst thing that can happen and what's the best thing that can happen. And the truth lying somewhere in the middle. Because I think sometimes we prevent ourselves from doing that kind of catastrophic thinking. And catastrophic thinking is not like a great habit to be in. But if you're really wanting to move yourself, I do think it's helpful sometimes, because whenever I strategically allow myself to go down that road of wondering what's the worst thing that could happen, I usually get to a point where I'm almost finding myself comical. It's like I get, and then I'll be lying on a park bench and, a bird will poop on my head and all my belongings will be in a paper bag. And, something like that is where I get to, at which point I think, this just doesn't seem realistic.
Right. Like when have I ever gone without a meal or a roof over my head?
Exactly. This doesn't seem realistic. And so I think strategically, when we avoid thinking about the fear, when we push it away, it's like the monster that you never look at under the bed, which is really a sweater. When we allow ourselves to be with that side of things, it can be very helpful. And then we look at the, oh my goodness, and then we could, change the world and make $1 billion. And you think, well, that's possibly also as unlikely as me being on the park bench. But somewhere between these two things exists a reality that makes me feel comfortable enough to take that small step, whatever it may be, to stretch outside of my comfort zone. So that's my takeaway.
That's what we'll do. One thing small enough to get done, big enough to matter, right? That's the motto of the year. On that note.
Yes. On that note. So that's a wrap for today's episode of You Are Inevitable. Thank you for joining us. We are all on this journey of self-discovery and growth together. We're so grateful that you come along for the ride with us. If you are listening to this on the replay, we would absolutely love it if you liked, subscribed, and even leave us some feedback. And until next time, you are inevitable. And we can't wait to see you again
in a couple of weeks. All right. Take care, everyone. That was fun. Thanks again, Natalie. Love it. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen.